Yes, we're still involved in trying to stop the bullying epidemic, but we've discovered a few things along the way. One, people who are fit physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually have a better outlook on life and are more apt to treat others with kindness and respect. Secondly, those who are fit in the 4 areas mentioned have a much higher self-esteem and they love themselves. Those who love themselves love others much more freely. For the record, my name is Jim Burns, and I am a NASM certified personal trainer. This podcast is designed to help others get consistently fit in more areas than one.
Thanks for tuning into our podcast. We love having you here, and it's our mission to bring you all the latest and greatest tips, skills, and know-how to make you the best that you can be. We know that you have it in you, and we're going to show you how. Now, let's get started.
Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome back to Consistently Fit. My name is Jim Burns. As I said in my intro, I am a NASM certified personal trainer. My passion has always been anti-bullying, but we've discovered along the way that, people that don't like themselves, people that have no confidence in themselves, people who have low self-esteem, people who basically don't exercise, don't read, and have strained relationships with either their parents, their siblings and friends, and so on. And those that don't have a faith in something that's bigger than them usually are unhappy people. And it's my hope that through this podcast, we can work together to help people get balanced in the 4 areas that I mentioned, but also to get specific in certain things. And as I do these podcasts, I've found myself becoming more and more vulnerable to my audience, because I believe you need to know a lot about me in order to trust me, in order to trust me as a trainer, in order to trust me as a person, in order to trust me as a individual that's delivering information that I believe to be accurate. And I look up information all the time to make sure I'm not sharing inaccurate information. So I need you to trust me, and trust comes from being vulnerable. So if somebody comes into me and tries to share information with me and they need help, if they don't give me the truth, I can't help them. They have to be vulnerable with me, and I have to be vulnerable with you in order for you to really listen and get a real clear understanding of what I'm trying to do. And today I'm going to talk about something that I don't think gets discussed enough. I think that there are plenty of podcasts out there, radio shows out there. There's plenty of Christian television out there, faith-based information out there. You just have to go on TV any Sunday morning, and you could see Dr. Charles Stanley, you could see Joel Osteen, you could see a host of other people who are there preaching. They're called your TV evangelists, and they're there. they're there. And some people who are shut in, they listen and they watch and they gather information to help them live their life and get closer to God. And that happens to be their venue. And I'm not going to be talking about any of that today. But what I'm going to be talking about is something that is contained in our fourth dimension. And that's the spiritual dimension. And what I want to share with you is faith. Faith. And what faith is an assurance that things are going to go okay and a belief in things that are unseen. That's what faith is. And myself, I am a Christian. I'm a Christian. And I believe in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And I believe in many things contained, in all things, I should say, contained in the Bible. I think that the Bible is a beautiful book if you want to get some answers to some of life's most difficult questions. And sometimes we need answers to some of life's easiest questions, like how do you discipline your kids? And there was a verse that was shared with me many years ago by a good friend named Larry, who was a terrific speaker, and he took me with him many times to go and speak. And the verse in the Bible went like this: the eye that mocks the father and despises to obey the mother, and this is found in Proverbs chapter 29, and despises to obey the mother, the ravens of the valley will pluck it out, and the young eagles will eat it. And I heard that verse, and I started to wonder what type of relationship that I had with my daughter, who was young at the time. And what I should have been thinking was, what type of relationship did I have, or did I have, with my parents? You see, the eye that mocks the father. Now, why would a child mock their father? Well, there's an old story that goes, dad comes home from work, mom is making dinner, son comes up to dad and says, Dad, can I go out in the yard and play? Dad says, yes. On the way out, mom intercepts him and says, I said no more tonight. And the boy looks back at his dad and says, Dad, you told me I could go out. I says, I know I did, but I didn't know your mother had something going on, so you have to stay in. Now, after dad gets vetoed a few times with this, you know what happens? Son comes up to him and asks him a question, and dad says, don't ask me, go ask your mother. And as a father, we end up taking a big hit, because we are seen as someone who will not make a decision. Meanwhile, our spouse, our wife, our partner is suffering from something that's called decision fatigue, because she's making all of them and she's becoming more and more resentful. So what I would encourage any young couple to do, just from a practical standpoint, as soon as dad comes home from work, I would encourage dad to sit down with mom and say, what went on here today? So at least he has enough information to be able to make a decision if one of the children ask him a question. Now that's an aside, and that's a very good story, and that's something that we should consider. Because I think in homes, you have husbands and wives, and I think things get out of balance. Now, I'm going to say 2 years, I sat and prayed, and I took the time every morning to read the book of Proverbs and to pray. Read the book of Proverbs and pray. I read a chapter a day and I pray. Now I read other stuff too, but that's my, if I have 5 minutes, that's my go-to place. Read one chapter in the book of Proverbs. Today happens to be the 10th, so you read chapter 10 today. Chapter 10 talked a lot about fools. So I read that. I have my prayer list set up, and I say a few prayers in the morning for my family, for the world, and so on, this country, our leadership, and I pray. Felt good, did it for 2 years, and like anything else, when you feel stressed or you feel pressed, certain things go by the wayside. And believe it or not, that was one of the easiest things for me to dump, was reading and praying. It seemed like whenever there's a problem that we have, God is the last place that we go to, and he's the first person that we eliminate, when he should be the first person we go to and the one that we should grow closer to, not push him further away. But I stopped praying. I stopped reading. And you know what I discovered? There were small things that were happening to me over that 2-year period. I didn't even notice them. I was calmer. I was much less argumentative with my wife. I could deal with my children and stepchildren better. I wasn't as worried about money and my new career. I had bypass surgery this past January. And guess what? I came through that thing. God showed me so many ways to get through it, and you could read the article I'll put up on the website, is how I trained for quadruple bypass. And I woke up from that bypass surgery, and in about 2 weeks, I was walking 2 miles. It was like it never happened. And God was the one that did that. He's the one that intervened in my behalf. So, and he basically said, "Hey, Burns, I got more here for you to do on this earth. You're not ready yet." And the doctor came in and said to me after the surgery, "You got 25 years because of the healthiness of your heart, and you just had blocked arteries." See, I don't have heart disease. I have coronary artery disease. Now, I finally got back on track. And my wife and I, and don't get me wrong, we do okay. We pay our bills. I'm retired, but I work as a college professor. She works part-time. I have pension, Social Security. I mean, I have things, but you're always there's some things that just crop up. Like my daughter came from Florida with her baby, and we were here visiting with her for a month. And we had to make sure we took care of some of her needs. And other things crop up that are off the grid expenses that you don't know that have to be paid for. And before you know it, there's a little bit of too many bills at the end of the check, and you find yourself scrambling for a couple bucks. It happens. You know it happens. I don't have to tell you this. But I saw that happen to me when I was younger. But when I'm in a state of prayer and devotion and reading and doing what I have to do, those things don't seem to creep up on me as much. They're there, but I don't feel them as much. There's not as much anxiety associated with them. I get back on track. My wife comes to me. I'm an instructor at a college. Many of the courses that I teach are based on enrollment. I'm waiting for I'm going to be teaching a class in October. I need more classes. All I did was pray. I took a little bit of responsibility by sending out a few emails, and voila, okay, 3 classes get confirmed. Now, you really can't tell me, or maybe you can. You could say to me, well, that was just happenstance. But see, I have faith in things that are not seen. I have faith in things that are not seen. And if you believe that things are going to work out and you're in the process of prayer, you're prayerfully working things through, and you basically do what I call active waiting, which is nothing more than you taking some responsibility in the process while you're asking God to help you. He will intervene in your behalf, and he will make sure that things get done. Now, here's the hard part. You see, God will intervene, but there are some things that don't happen in our time frame. They just don't happen in our time frame. That's all there is to it. You know why? Because God's not ready to do it. And God, as much as he loves us, knows that there's going to be a certain amount of discomfort here. And it may be related to, why was I last on your list to come to? I'm going to take care of you, but you got to wait a little longer. How come, when you were really shaking in your boots, okay, and this is not me, but others may do this, why were you drinking a little more instead of just praying to me? There's questions that God may have, but none of them are related to the fulfillment of a prayer, but they are related to the time frame in getting that prayer answered. And I know this. You know how I know it? And I'm going to share this one thing. I wrote an article. I'm going to put it up for you also in this podcast. It's called It's called The Change Process. Number 1 on the list is change is a step of faith. Change is a step of faith. If we want change, we have to know that if we do certain things, other things that are more positive are going to happen. I know myself that if I drink a milkshake every day, probably at the end of the year, I'm going to gain a few pounds and maybe more than I would like. I know that poor eating ultimately will affect me. I knew that smoking affected me, but I didn't have any symptoms or problems until, and I had quit smoking a long time ago, but I had symptoms and problems like 2 years ago that were completely related to smoking, and that's blocked arteries in your heart. See, the change took a while. Change is very incremental. And sometimes you don't even notice the small successes that occur. And you also don't notice the small changes in your body and your mind and your spirit, which I didn't notice until I got back into the prayer mode and leaning on God more. So, like, if you're thinking of going on a diet, you're not going to see the weight loss right away, and you're going to get frustrated when you only see small improvements. But if you stay the course, if you have the faith that the right eating will improve your health and avoid weight-related issues, 1 pound of weight loss per week is going to transfer into 52 pounds of weight loss at the end of a year. Now, that's nice, isn't it? Isn't that beautiful? That's all you got to do. And there's no but in here. That's all you have to do, is realize that change is incremental, and you ask God's assistance to go before you and fill that void, to make sure that he can quell your hunger, make sure that he forces you to make better choices with your eating. And guess what? He gives us a free will. God gives us a free will. We can do whatever we want, we can do. Did you know that? But God also knows that there's a consequence associated with that free will. And if you want to be exposed to it, he says, go right ahead. So the consequence with me, 4 blocked arteries. Smoking, he didn't stop me from smoking. He didn't say, hey, you better quit smoking. But the love that he had for me, he didn't take me out either. He didn't say, you're coming home. He said, you got work to do here. And he made me healthier now than I've ever been in my life, and that includes when I was in my 40s. The same true is personal growth. When we rise early, when we get up early in the morning, we speak the truth, we control our anger, and we treat others with kindness and respect, our actions will then speak louder than our words. We become the example for others. Our actions will result in greater confidence, and our attitude will change. You see, that's what happened to me. As I prayed and got into prayer, my attitude changed. My heart softened toward my kids and my wife. I didn't even know that my heart was hardening, but it was, because change is so incremental. And that incremental change has a way of creeping up on you. There's a Bible verse that says, be sober, be vigilant. Your adversary, the devil, creeps around like a roaring lion, seeking to whom he may devour. What happens? But it's slow. It's slow. And you don't see it happening, but it does happen. And I'm not a preacher. I'm merely one guy who basically discovered that success and failure is based upon my faith and how big or small it is at the time. And when you go through all of that and you develop the confidence, you're going to see a heartfelt change from the inside out. Same holds true if you want to get on an exercise program. Start off slow. Have the confidence that what you're doing is going to work. Have the faith knowing that you're going to be in better health. Don't look for huge changes. Just get out there, get the walk in, do neat non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, and say, this is going to work. This healthy lifestyle is going to work far better than what I was doing. Don't lose faith when it doesn't work right away. Because a pound of weight loss a week, if you stay the course, is 52 pounds. And I said that already. So just stay the course. Have the faith that what you're doing is going to work. Now, professionally, when we take the time to understand others, and in my case, it was my students, when I was a teacher and a high school administrator, and slowly work with them to change their behavior. Our confidence, if we take our time with it, will grow and we'll realize the benefits of our actions. In other words, the love, the joy, the peace, the long suffering, all of that requires some work in order to change the behavior of a child. And research has proven that it takes 6 or 7 corrections for a student to permanently change his behavior. But you gotta be persistent and you gotta stay the course, and you have to have the faith and the confidence that what you're doing is going to work. My name's Jim Burns. You're listening to the Consistently Fit podcast. We're talking about faith right now. We're talking about faith. Having the faith that things will go and head in the right direction. Not right away, but there are certain qualities that we have to have. Patience is the big one. Patience is the big one. This is all part of the 4th dimension, the spiritual dimension. I became vulnerable with you today so you could see where I was coming from and why I see this as a very important place for me. And by the way, the beauty of what happened to me was when I fell off the wagon and stopped praying and stopped reading and so on is I knew where to go. I knew I had a place to go. And when you know that you have a place to go and you can go there anytime, then you feel a whole lot better when that light bulb goes on in your head and say, oh man, I really blew it. So what? Now I have that place to go. For my comfort, for my love, for understanding, I have that. It's like the prodigal son. When he was eating in the pig pen, he was eating pig slop. And he finally, the light bulb went on in his head and he said, I have a place to go. I can go back to my father. And his father took him and embraced him and loved him just the same, even though he left home in rebellion. And that's what happens for me when my faith rests with God. When I fall off the wagon, he comes and he takes me back. Just so simple, so easy. And I then begin to feel more relaxed, more confident, and far more comfort. And that's my story. That's my story. That's how I see it. That's exactly how I see it. So that was the Consistently Fit podcast, and the topic was faith. I'm going to include the journal, The Eye That Mocks the Father, in the description here, and I'm also going to give you this article that I wrote on the change process. So just click on those links, and you'll be able to read some real interesting stuff. The journal, I don't know what the journal cost, about $6.99. And by the way, if you haven't gone to Patreon yet, go to Patreon, Consistently Fit podcast and videos. Go there, please. Make a donation. We're trying very hard to raise money to keep this podcast rolling along. And I hope that you guys can make a contribution to it. So once again, my name is Jim Burns. It's 11:35 a.m. on October 10th in New Jersey, and I have a gorgeous sunny day, and the sun is coming through my window. It's absolutely gorgeous today, and I'm going to get out and take my walk. My wife's downstairs. I'll go down and give her a kiss very shortly. But thank you for listening to Consistently Fit. I hope you got a lot out of this podcast, and I look to see you again. By the way, we're going to have a podcast on Thursday as well, and it'll go up on Thursday or Friday. It's with a gentleman named Dr. Eric Recker. who really has a terrific story. And I think if you can also check in on that podcast, you're going to learn a lot. And I hope that you do take that time to do it. So once again, my name's Jim Burns. Thanks for listening to Consistently Fit. And I'll see you all Thursday, I hope. New podcast coming out that day. Take care, everybody.